wonderful audience. My name is Susanna Waddington, and I am a senior at Springfield Township High School in Erdenheim, Pennsylvania. And I'm here to tell you a little bit about opera. Now, I know you're all sitting in this audience waiting for the live stream from the Metropolitan Opera in HD to watch whatever opera you have paid for. But how many of you are actually here of your own free will? Or have you been dragged here by someone in your family or a friend? Whether or not you are here of your own free will, there are some things about opera that you should know before you watch your wonderful performance that will help you appreciate this art form even more than you already do, or maybe don't. So, what I'm here to talk to you about today is the misconceptions in opera. The first being that opera is for an elite or mature crowd and not accessible to every age and every group of people. This statement and misconception is completely untrue. To prove that this is untrue, I'm going to take you back in opera history to when it first began. Opera first began in 1598 in Florence, Italy. And for about the first 35 years, up until 1635, it remained the performance for only Italian court nobility. So maybe it is a little true that opera was originally made for those who had enough money or who were very royal. But after 1635, it became the art form for everybody to enjoy. What happened was that in 1635, the Tron family, located in Venice, Italy, played house to a group of traveling opera performers and allowed them to perform their opera in their theater in the town of Venice. After that, several other theater owners decided to do the same. And from then on, opera began to spread throughout France and Spain, making it one of the most popular art forms in European history. The second part of my first misconception is the idea of storyline. Some people believe that not only is opera inaccessible because of the cost of what it takes to see a live performance, but also because of what the story is. And that is completely untrue. If you look at operas from the past 200 years, most of their storylines follow pastoral ditties or mythologies, and these are all relatable.
For example, look at Puccini's La Bohème.
That story is about people who are in Paris who are living the Bohème lifestyle. They are the lowest of the low. They have no money, and it's all about their story of finding love and having to deal with death. Another storyline that is completely accessible is the opera The Barber of Seville. This one focuses specifically on a barber who is also a matchmaker. He is not the richest person in the time or the setting. He is just an average person who is focused on throughout the opera because he makes things funny and lighthearted and helps two people fall in love. So you see, opera is accessible. Not only can you go and see a live performance in your local theater, like here at Ambler Theater for only $20, you can go and rent a DVD for only $5 or $6 at your local library, or even purchase it through Amazon and watch it with subtitles. That way there's no language issue, and the storylines are completely relatable. You only have to go and search for it. Another misconception about opera is that the music is uninteresting or unexciting, and this is completely not true. Opera came from the Baroque or classical period of music, which some may find as boring or just not interesting enough for them to listen to. But if you take the time to listen to this music, you can see how beautiful and amazing it is. If you look at how hard people work in opera, it will amaze you. Just look at the vocalists. They stay on stage for up to 5 hours singing the entire time, while acting, while being in a costume, and while interacting with other people. It's amazing the amount of stamina that these people have. And if you look back at the history of how people trained for opera, it's also just mind-blowing. The vocalists themselves had to go to vocal schools. These vocal schools came about because opera was so in demand and popular. These people were learning how to sing in certain ways, and this has now become known as today as taking voice lessons in the classical style. Without these lessons, these people wouldn't have been able to give opera what it needed. But not only do the vocalists get the main attention, the orchestra is also just as important. In fact, as opera developed, so did the role of the orchestra. In some operas, there are just complete scenes where it's just orchestral music with ballet or dance or just changing of scenes with no speaking or singing at all. The people who play in the orchestra take just as much time. They too go to school for music, and they get a degree in that, and then they go and dedicate their lives to this art form. It's not just something they do on the weekend. These people who participate in opera are dedicating their lives to this work, and they should at least be appreciated for all the hard work they put into it. Now, aside from that, the music is beautiful. Half the time the music is supposed to evoke emotion or create nature sounds for those who are performing the music. If you only give it a try, you can see that classical music is beautiful and that opera music is just as amazing because of the singing that goes into it and the amazing orchestra that goes into it as well. So my third misconception that I have found to be true about opera is the language barrier. Now, as I said, opera was created in Venice, Italy, so most operas are in Italian. Now, there are a lot others that are also in French and German, but there aren't that many that are in English, and even though there are, they are not frequently as performed as the classics. Now, I know that it's really hard to go and sit and watch something that isn't in the English language, which is what we mostly speak here in America, but translations aren't really the best either. If you go and you see a translation of an Italian opera, sometimes it can be a little strangely translated, and sometimes people will laugh more at the translation than they will at the actual line. Sometimes the translations are so silly, it makes a dramatic opera seem more like a comedy. But we aren't the only ones who experience this horrible translation. Operas that we have in English, for example Porgy and Bess, are translated into German, and in Germany they get even sillier translations. For example, the classic aria from Porgy and Bess called Bess, you is my woman now, in German is Bess, du ist mein Frau, ja, ja. Just think how silly that sounds. More people would laugh at that than actually see how serious that number is. So, considering the language barrier, translations seem out. But what is in is translation on a screen. And if you go to most opera houses, they have what are called surtitles. And they're screens that go right across the front of the stage, and most translations are in English. Now, not everything is translated, because in opera a lot of things are repeated, but it gives you enough translation that you can follow the storyline and connect with the characters and enjoy the music. Another way to experience opera without the language barrier is to watch it in a theater like you are right now, and you can see subtitles on the bottom of your screen. Another way to enjoy this is if you borrow a DVD recording of an opera, where they almost always give you the option of subtitles, just like when you watch a foreign film. So in the end, the language barrier really seems to not really exist as much as it did before. Another really awesome technological advance that has been made is being featured now in the Metropolitan Opera House in New York City, where right in the back of your seat they have screens where you can translate the opera's language into whatever language you need to have. So the language barrier, like I said, is almost non-existent. You can still enjoy opera no matter what language it's in, and you can enjoy it to its fullest. So in the end, can you really have an excuse for not watching this opera? I don't think so. The storylines are relatable, the music is amazing, and the language barrier hardly exists, especially in this setting. So sit back and enjoy your performance.